got some amazing speakers that have flown in from, oh my God, Hong Kong, London, etc., to be here. We're all in different time zones. And these ladies have prepared information, which starts with, in the middle, Agnieszka Winkler, who's with me in the Women Corporate Directors for Northern California. And we had her and Janice Burzak. Am I missing anything? Burzak. She'll say it properly. I don't speak Russian. Who is really the father of censors, speak at our conference, and that was what sort of turned me on to say, "Oh my God, you guys, we've got to talk about this. This is really important." Agnieszka co-founded a number of companies. She's been on 4 NASDAQ firms. She's a member of WCD and a bunch of other companies. And she's really one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I'm so privileged and happy to have her here to speak. Cecilia Puchenk, who's in the orange. She didn't know we were wearing orange. This just sort of randomly happened. Is a director of Blue Spark Technologies. She's a CFA and a serial entrepreneur. I've had the pleasure of riding bicycles with her in France, and she's got very good taste in wine, besides being brilliant and lots of fun. And Salona Bonwald, who is a director of InnerSource Engineering. She's been involved with PayPal, created e-commerce, websites, and she coined Citability, which you'll have to explain, and Codathons, I think, is the other thing, which, of course, is very popular now. So if you would give these ladies a hand of applause. It's been a lot of work. They've worked very hard on this.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And today I'm actually speaking on behalf of Decensor Summit, which was founded by my good friend, and I'll say again, Dr. Janusz Berezek. He's Polish. He is considered the global father of censors. And he started T-Censors, which is a consortium of business people and technologists for the purposes of developing businesses to meet the coming need. And my role here on this panel today is a little bit to give you kind of the big picture of the tsunami that's coming at you from a technological perspective. So, what are censors, and fundamentally, why should you care? If you are a board director, if you are a CEO, if you're an employee of any company, if you own any stock anywhere in the world, you're going to need to know the information that you'll be hearing from this wonderful panel and my colleagues here today. Censors are already ubiquitous in your life, but you may not actually be focusing on them, and they're going to drive incredible change by 2025, which, folks, is only 9 years away. Self-driving cars, you hear a lot about it, but if you have a newer model car, then you probably have parking assist. You probably have the car screaming at you if you try to change the lane and it isn't safe. Your activity monitors probably have sensors in them. The wearable market is expected to have hundreds of sensors per person in the very near future. There are going to be thousands of sensors involved in robot skins. We had an interesting presentation this morning about aging, and you can see in the lower photo a very realistic-looking robot. Japan is actually at the forefront of developing robots that not only will take care of the aged, but will actually engage them in conversation, play games with them, because they're going to be imbued with a tremendous amount of artificial intelligence. Drones, you've heard a lot about. Ultrasonic diagnostics, computers essentially are going to be taking over a lot of what's currently done with diagnostics. Sensors in personal airbags for the aging population to help prevent all those hip injuries from falling. Essentially, there's not going to be a single solitary sector of the economy that will not be touched by sensors. In fact, almost every single sector of the economy already has sensors involved. Now, why should you care? First of all, 40% of Fortune 500 companies will be obsoleted by 2025, according to Peter Diamandis. So their business models will be replaced by a word that you've heard actually several times already today, the exponential organization. One example for that is Kodak went bankrupt in 2012, while at the same time Instagram was being acquired by Facebook for $1 billion. Brand new company replacing just a stalwart that we'd known for such a long time. 50% of the U.S. workforce will be displaced by robots by 2025, according to GE. You know, there's a lot of conversation on the political realm right now about trade barriers being the reason for, and globalization as being the reason for loss of jobs, when in fact it is technological obsolescence, which is affecting the entire globe, that's causing the loss of jobs. Most of you, I think, know what IoT means: Internet of Things, Internet of Everything. Internet of Things is projected to create about 100 million jobs in the US, but they're going to be radically different kinds of jobs from the ones that we have today, and about 300 million globally. So there's going to be a lot of retraining required. So now, what are kind of the driving forces of this big change? First of all, it's this concept of exponential growth, and you've heard that several times today too. And essentially that means a doubling, every year doubling, which causes companies to grow at 10 times faster than their peers. Many of you have probably heard of Gordon Moore's, Moore's law, that computing power increases, doubles every 18 months. Well, we have that factor happening, but in much shorter period of time across a lot more different technologies. And then we're also going to have convergence of technologies. Pretty much most technologists agree that these are the 8 core technologies: computing, cloud, artificial intelligence, sensors and networks, digital medicine, robotics, biotech and bioinformation, and 3D printing. These are the core technologies that are going to help drive this tsunami. But there's another force that is speeding up things, and that is the convergence of these technologies. They're not all standalone. They're highly, highly interactive and interrelated. And sensors, combined with the internet, are considered to be the driving force of growth of all 8 categories. So sensors, in a sense, are a foundational technology for the things that are coming down the pike, and that's the reason why you really need to know about it. Theo referred to the third wave of the internet. Another way to look at it is GDP revolutions. In the 18th century, GDP was primarily a factor of population. So the more people you had, the higher the GDP, and India and China were the companies that in fact actually led the way. Over time, in the first GDP revolution, also driven by technology, we had steam, we have electricity, we have the internal combustion engine, we have aeronautics, and Europe begins to become the leader. In the second GDP revolution, we have transistors and computers, the internet, and US and Japan start to lead. What we have now is the emerging third GDP revolution, and that actually fuses computing, communications, and sensing. I'm going to sit down actually for a minute. And that's critically important because we started out with the internet for people and communications, and then we moved to the Internet of Things. Things couldn't communicate until sensors were developed, because sensors are the things that actually collect all of the information. And when all of this begins to happen, it begins to free people from manual labor and repetitive labor in general, and leaves them free for more creative work. Now, how did this all come about? It was actually triggered, believe it or not, despite the problems that Apple has today, by the iPhone, which was introduced in 2007, and it made very dramatic impact on multiple technologies: the global networks, wireless communication systems integration, energy sources. And during that time, what also happened is the sensor technologies changed dramatically. The size, the weight, the power consumption, cost reduction, by a factor of, unbelievable, by 100 to 1,000 times in just 8 years. Now, this third GDP revolution is also being fueled by VC funding. And some interesting statistics are that 92 billion worldwide was funded in 2015, of which 64 billion was in the US, and of that, about 60% was in California. So we are kind of in the center of the universe when it comes to this kind of dramatic change. And another totally aside factor, just to tell you about how much things are changing, of the 92 billion worldwide, a number that shocked me is that last year, 1/3 of it was actually crowdfunding. So keep that in mind before you rush to invest with your local VC. Now, just give you a little background on sensor data. Sensors that are going to be collecting all of this data will generate one chronotype of data, something that, it's a word that we're not even all that familiar with, and that will be as early as 2025. And then all of that data, processing it, will strain the global IT infrastructure. It's not currently equipped to handle it. There are not going to be enough programmers to develop all the algorithms that are necessary to process this incredible amount of big data, so that there will be a big shift to artificial intelligence. And the interesting statistic, again, financially, is that data analytics is actually expected to generate about 60 to 90% of global profits by 2025. Something pretty amazing. All of this leads to what kind of a world? And it's in our lifetime, because it's a very short period of time. So there are kind of two camps. Some believe that the Internet of Everything and sensors will lead to a fabulous future, that for the first time we will have abundance. That's Peter Diamandis with his book Abundance. All the major problems of the earth will be solved because we will have the technology and the will to do it. So we will have a world without hunger. There will be medical care available for everyone. We will have clean water, air, and energy for everyone. And it's a very exciting and inspiring kind of a vision to work towards, because we know we have the technologies to do it. There are some challenges, but we have the technologies. And then there are others that have a different view, and they believe that it'll end our global economic system as we know it, as robots and intelligent machines continue to replace humans for production of goods and services. So if you kind of think about, throughout the world, we are a consumer-driven global economy. But as you replace humans with robots, two things happen. One, that human no longer has a source of income, so they can't really buy goods and services because they're, it's part of a little bit of the change we're seeing in society today. And the second part is that a robot doesn't need to buy a house, doesn't need to buy a stroller for his or her kid. A robot doesn't go out to eat, doesn't interface with a banking system. So that also reduces the need for creating goods and services because the demand is dramatically lower. And that I would refer you to Martin Ford, who is an economist, his book Lights in the Tunnel. So two very, very competing visions, each of which require discussion, conversation, thought, and some major policy changes, because our world is about to be very, very different. So in summary, 2025 is less than 10 years away, and that's going to happen like that. Sensors are a driving force of this disruptive change, so you need to pay attention to them. Every single person globally will be affected. Massive job training is going to be required, because we're not talking about only lower level jobs being replaced. We're talking about many administrative and even higher level jobs. The last company that I incorporated, I did it through LegalZoom. Never had an attorney, did it online, cost me $700, just like that. Amazing business opportunities are already available today. The first sensor billionaires have already emerged with the acquisition of Nest. But we will have to have some major policy changes. We're going to have to think about different investment strategies. We're going to have to think about what is the meaning of work. And I think we're going to have to think about what does it mean to be a human being. So that's for discussion later on with our panelists. And thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Salona Bonvald, and mine is also kind of an overview, but it's from a different perspective in that I'm very much so the nerd in this group. I'm the one who's I build stuff. I'm a maker, I'm a hacker. I helped get Maker Faire to Austin, Texas the first time, and so I build a lot of things. So a lot of this kind of ends up I guess, being from my perspective. So it's really cool to see the businessy overview. But I'm gonna try to not be too nerdy for you. I'm doing a special format, which is called an Ignite format. It was started by some Maker Faire people, actually, Bradley and Forrest and Bree Pettis, and it's 20 slides, 15 seconds per slide. I have to go on to the next topic. I only torture you for 5 minutes. Does that sound good? So let's go. All right. Okay, so just going through a little bit in regards to definitions. A sensor. What is a sensor? Well, it's an object whose purpose is to detect events and changes and then provides a corresponding output. So when we sit there and say sensors, we're talking about a really huge amount of different things that can be out there. And there's definitely many different ways that you can go through and categorize it. You know, there's some of the different economic ones that she was talking about. There's things that you can talk about in regards to form factors. There's ways in regards to how they communicate. There's a lot of different ways that you can go through and categorize the sensors. And it should be forwarding. Fine. Okay, I'm just going to have to do it myself. So one of the first ones that I've worked on previously is the talking about the Internet of Things is the industrial sector. I helped work on some projects for clean coal in the mid-90s, where we were able to take coal production plants and by doing sensors and neural networks, take them from 80% efficiency to 99% efficiency. That's getting even more extreme to the point where talking with some companies in India about how to actually not just create an industry that's more green, but also very nice to its employees. So dealing with some of the other issues that I'm sure some of y'all have had when you go and visit some of the different factories in other countries, where I can actually monitor them without them being able to lie. The next one is medical, and she's gonna get nice and in-depth into that. But going through and looking at all of the different things that are happening in medical, it's very phenomenal. My mom does research, and I get to sit there and watch with a lot of her stuff. The one thing I do worry about a fair amount is the safety and security of some of the different devices that I see, however. And then smart buildings, working with the government. The thing that it highlighted the most for me is the government got in from, I guess they spent $7 billion on the smart building project, had all this data, did not know what to do with it. Because the sensors vary so greatly in regards to the input and things that they're given, that they were talking about standardization. And then it can go further than that. So things can become even more small than we're even thinking currently. You have the materials. The materials themselves can help you in regards to becoming the sensors. One of my favorites is the Piezo. Oh, really? We're going to do a different transition. Next. And then we've also got, the chemical ones that have also started to evolve. And, space, of course, is like pushing the levels in regards to that. So, how many of y'all have a sensor kit with you right now? Hey, I see a smart one right in the front. She waved her cell phone at me. You are correct. Cell phone, time, location, gyroscope. It has a gyroscope, it has an accelerometer, it has a sorry, I'm like jet lagged from London. Magnetometer, temperature, proximity, ambient light, moisture, microphone, and camera. So in regards to all of these different things, y'all are all already carrying one around. If you want to go and see how interesting it's getting, just get on the App Store. And you can sit there and see all the amazing stuff that little sensor that you're already carrying with you can do. One of my new interesting ones is the VR and augmented reality stuff that you can just plug your cell phone in and it can tell exactly what your head is, what you're doing. With the augmented reality, it can actually see what you're looking at and tell you what things are. So there's limitations that are happening in regards to it, and this might be one of the parts where we have some dialogue going on. But the biggest one that I end up seeing is power. And the power for all of these different ones. There are some interesting things happening in regards to like radio frequency and batteries and things of that nature, but it still ends up being the most limiting factor. That's one reason why everyone is pursuing the cell phone, is because cell phones have these amazing little robots that charge them every night. The next thing that I have here is I show one of the server rooms, and that is the limitations of putting everything on the internet and hoping to process things through that, because those things can become a bottleneck. And my favorite, encryption. Very important that we address that. Right now, I'm a member of Hackers. I go to a lot of different places where not everybody goes. And I've seen cars hacked. Cell phones are easy. I've seen houses hacked. I can unlock your door. I can open up your garage. I can do all sorts of different things. We need to start really thinking hard about encryption when it comes to a lot of these different ones. It's probably the main thing that I say every single time I'm put on an advisory board for a medical device. Is how have you encrypted it? What does the encryption look like? And that goes back to what she was talking about in regards to the processing of data, because this is where it's going to hit us hard. We need to encrypt, and that's going to cost us power and computing space. This is the Internet of Everything sort of thing. It's basically showing all the different categories that these are going to be affecting us as individuals. But she did a much better job of it than me. And then we have e-learning. And I like to use that one ironically, because actually I want to talk about machine learning, because that's where the actual gains are going to be made in regards to this. And I think it's this funny dichotomy of where we have all the different things that we would like for this to do at the same time with the loss of privacy. So we have to learn with the tools themselves in regards to what we want to do on machine learning. We are self-reporting sensors because of, like with our cell phones, we are self-reporting. Add that in with your Google data and your search data and your Facebook data, and we've made huge strides on facial recognition because of this, because we're self-tagging ourselves, we're doing things of that nature. We've made really good progress on video recognition too, because I can sit there and tell where you are and things, and it's been teaching the computers how to better recognize objects. And so one of the things that we need to discuss a lot more is who owns this data, because we're creating it, but we're creating it in conjunction with other people. So when you sit there and you're thinking about what that ownership looks like, there's a lot there that isn't traditionally addressed by most ownership law. And we need to come up with what those rules might be. I know the EU is definitely going a lot farther than we are in that regards, but we need to consider what those are and what those look like as being part of our political conversation. And, you know, we've got a lot of really big change factors coming down the line, as she was mentioning previously. We've got some orders of magnitude that are about to happen to us. You know, self-driving cars, pretty obvious. I think the way cars look is going to change significantly in the next 15 years. I don't think cars will look like they look like currently. Once we get self-driving, then we no longer need a lot of safety features. We no longer need a whole bunch of other different things. It's a serious order of magnitude that's going to happen, especially for America, since we're so dependent. My pet, mesh networking. This is the thing that I've had several startups in regards to. I think that I've gotten in several fights with certain VPs of certain telecoms. I see no reason why my phone has to go to a cell phone network to talk to your phone. I don't see why our phones can't talk to each other. I don't see why all of these things can't just talk to each other without having to go through a centralized entity that's making decisions for me. So I think that's going to change it. It also addresses the power issue. One of the main things that consumes power is broadcast. How many of y'all have noticed how your phones act when you're not near a tower? What happens to your battery life? That's all broadcasting. So if we can actually start working more towards mesh networking, then we can actually reduce the amount of power that these things take. And then lastly, just a nice little reminder about machine learning. How accurate has Netflix become for some of y'all? It's become really accurate for me, except for occasionally when it decides that I'm a gay man. But maybe I guess that's probably what causes that. But and that's the end of my presentation. So thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Salona and Agnieszka. Those were great presentations. Closer. Okay, thank you. So my presentation is not an overall, it's a little more towards healthcare and not as futuristic. It's more in the present, I think, looking towards the future. Yours is in the present. But I really appreciate the fact that we all looked at the iPhone and at certain things together. So my name's Cecilia Cruikshank. I've known Theo for a while. I am a board member of this company, Blue Spark. We've invented a patch that continuously monitors your body temperature, sends the information to your cell phone, you record it, it alerts you when it's too high, too low, and helps you figure out what to do with it and sends it to the doctor. So that's short, but I'll tell you what we're doing with other things and sensors. I want to show a few slides. This is what old technology was. A few decades ago, this was really new technology. The phone had been invented, and these girls were phone operators. Now we have new technology where women are astronauts. We have really gone a long ways, and technology has driven a lot of new jobs and new professions. A lot of what we do in the world, in the room today, are jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Or if we have a job that does exist, it's a different tool, a different platform. There's different needs and different requirements. This is healthcare. This is in 1960s. This is a photo. This is healthcare now or in the future. What's the difference between healthcare then and now? The only thing that's the same in both photos is that it's got a patient and a doctor or a medical person. Everything has changed. The sensors, the application, the needs, the expectations. We are taking control of our health and defining what we want from our medical care with all of these sensors. Here's another old one, the telephone. Here's the iPhone. I also noted that it was developed in 2007. And there's the Android, to give full disclosure, equal time. But we now have iPhones and Androids that are flexible, that don't have to be in a pocket. They can be anywhere. And they are the tool that helps us connect with everything. They are more than a phone. These are all technological sensors. These are all things that we can connect to in the world with each other, reading data. We can take control of our lives. We can take control of everything that we want to do. And all of these are through phones at the moment. They could be anything. This is where I was last month. I joked that I went to the South Pacific, no cell phones, no internet for 3 whole weeks. I had to prepare for a month before I took off, and no one could call or talk. I couldn't call or talk or message to anyone else. It was quite amazing. But back to the connected world, here we are. It's what we take for granted. We all do this, and we all probably we don't remember that 10 years ago we didn't have any of this. We would get on the phone, we would leave messages on voicemail machines. We just had come to expect it. We know that it will become more prevalent. We know that we will use it more and more, and we know it'll get cheaper and easier to use. And that's what we expect, and that's what we want to do. Here's a burglar alarm traditionally. The battery, a switch, no switch, and a siren, or this guy. Here's our connected home today. Not only do we have an alarm system, we manage the energy, we turn on the lights, we water the plants, we control the temperature, we check the security, we check the air quality. We do all of this from our cell phone or another app. I think it will be something other than a phone soon. We'll just call it our device. Yeah. New technology. How many of us actually have a printed map of how to drive around San Francisco? Right? Good for you. I have mine framed. And down here, this is, how do you find hubby? Okay, he's probably got a sensor on him. So sensors have really gone towards helping us define our healthcare and our well-being. And we are employing these, and it's so important that we take control and take charge of this. This first one here, is a breast cancer bra. I'm sure most of you have seen these, but this is a bra that can measure whether or not you're at risk or prone to breast cancer. That is just amazing. These shoes, they define your posture, they look at your gait, your step, they can find problems in your structural gait and your skeleton. These glasses, Hillary Clinton wore these a few years ago. After you've had a concussion, these glasses measure the reaction in your brain and what happens in the triggers from a concussion. And there's so many more things that we could have. Hearing aids are sensors. Hearing aids are just everything we take for granted, but it's a sensor that helps us get along in the world. Here's some other smart wearables. I think these are just amazing. These are children's socks that they're using in a pilot test in schools so the teachers know what the children's emotions are while they're teaching to them. That's a little scary. This, well, I got a reaction.
You did. You see what you did.
Okay. We also have sensors that, as we know, that you can measure all your physiological performance, how well you do at different tasks, all your blood pressure, your pulse rate. You can check your heart. You can check whether you're using your muscles in the right manner. You can check whether or not you've got the right dehydration or hydration. All of that can be mapped and tracked on your cell phone. This here is really interesting. This is skin. This is skin that's put on some surgical people, some burn victims, and it's a patch. It just dissolves in and helps you grow new skin. It senses what your body needs. These are implantable, so these are still sensors. They're not wearable sensors, but they're sensors. Cochlear, cardiac, insulin pumps, gastric, deep brain sensors, foot implants. It's just amazing. There are sensors that you can put around your heart, and if your heart starts to fail, the sensor squeezes it to keep it going. It's just, there's no limit. And these are things that are in the market. They're here.
Japan has a bra that opens when the woman is aroused.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Mm.
You don't have to say yes or no.
So, and another industry, as Salona and Agnieszka were talking, is home health care. Home health care is going to take all of these sensors, all of these advances in medicine and in consumables, in wearables, in energy usage and security, and home health care is going to become very cost effective. You're going to be a patient at home. You're going to have your temperature read on a patch and it's going to be sent to your caregiver or your doctor. And if your temperature rises, they're going to know right away. They're going to call you and say, hey, something's going on. Even if you see it, maybe you won't see it, they'll know it. The doctor will be able to prescribe medicine when the temperature starts to rise rather than wait for the other symptoms to show up. We've had very many cases in our work where we monitor sick children with mitochondria or genetic diseases that they really can't overcome. We put the patch on them, and the patch marks when their temperature starts to rise. The parents give them Tylenol or something small. Kids end up coming down with pink eye or some other disease. Not huge, not terrible, but when these kids are already sick, knowing that they have a temperature problem and they get that medicine right away, it lowers the temperature. The whole process is not as severe as it could have been, and everybody has a much easier time through the care. It really works to have sensors helping us with what we're doing. Okay, so I'm on the board of several different companies across the U.S. Most of them are clean tech, energy efficient, things like that. I ended up here because this company makes batteries that are completely recycled, thrown in the dump. They're printed ink on layers of paper on old printing presses that used to print newspapers. So we're recycling the machines and the people who are working the machines. And they're flexible and thin. You can see they're really tiny and really small. They're really just like that. And they power 1.5 volts each. We can make them bigger, but that little guy is only 1.5 volts, like a AA battery. So with these batteries, we have tried to figure out what to do. And the first thing we did, some of you may know BioBliss. They are wrinkled gel patches you put on your face, and the gel is electromagnetically pushed into your skin to reduce the wrinkles at a deeper, longer lasting, faster rate. And our little batteries are the ones who do that. Uh-oh. It works.
Where's the next one? Aaron?
Aaron?
Aaron Gallagher?
Aaron Gallagher. Uh-oh.
Raj. So they are going to redo all the internet in this place this year, which I can't wait for because it's frustrating as can be for the speakers when things aren't connected. And it could also be the wind blowing out here because the weather's changing. I'm going to entertain you for a second because, of course, it was foggy all day today, and nobody noticed that because we were so entranced with everything. But take a look out the window for a second.
Thank you.
You got it?
Got it.
Perfect.
Apologies. So besides the microcurrent in the patches, our little batteries are safe for children to have in their toys so they can light up their little kiddie meals at McDonald's. We've done these with the lights and the siren and the horns. Marathon groups track all their racers, make sure they were on course, make sure they finished correctly. Our batteries track they're in the app, and you track the racer, and it goes on the cell phone and keeps everything legit. One of our more recent products is Flora Life. There's a battery in this. It looks and feels like a credit card. I have a couple up here, but it's just like a credit card. It measures the continuous measurement of temperature of fish, drugs, flowers, anything. You slap it on it and you ship it for 6 or 7 months. Every 15 seconds, it monitors what the temperature was. And when it gets there, you say, well, I'll take delivery if it's been properly shipped and it's been temperature controlled. And if it's wrong, you just reject it right then and there. This is a huge increase in ability in the whole logistics industry. Because in the past, flowers would sit on the tarmac, they would be delivered old, people couldn't refuse them. Now, the information and what people can do with this is really important. We developed this patch from all of that. This is called TempTrack. Okay, here's my 1-minute plug. There it is, right there. Okay. So this is what it looks like. It's a little soft little Band-Aid. We call it the Band-Aid temperature tracker. It's FDA cleared. That's the healthcare amazing process. And it continuously monitors a kid for 24 hours. It goes to your cell phone. You can go to 4 cell phones. It can go to 1. You can be 70 feet away. You can be in your room. You can set alarms for the temperature to go off. You can go in and check your kid. You don't have to touch your kid. You don't have to wake them up, stick the thermometer in them. It's very accurate. And we've actually taken it to drug trials for personalized medicine. There's a lot of drug trials going on now where people are trying to solve cancer in a personalized medicine format. These patches monitor the temperature 24/7, and as soon as there's a spike in temperature, the doctors come in and can treat the person and react to problems. Rather than 5 or 6 hours later, they get it immediately. This is the future of smart wearables. This was an estimate in 2012. You can see sensors, as Salona and Agnieszka said, down here. Look where they are now. Look where they will be. Look at the percent of GDP, the Internet of Everything will be, in global GDP. The whole world is changing, and this whole industry is new jobs, new products, new expectations. And this is my new empowered citizen here who is going to be the future. With this, we are going to be empowered to make decisions of our own on our health care in all our aspects of our lives. We are going to be responsible for our decisions, and we're going to take charge of them. Thank you.
Thank you.